Hello and bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for joining the Deloitte AI Institute Canada's webcast today for our discussion on the Gravity Challenge. My name is Audrey Ancion, and I'm the AI Institute leader for Deloitte Canada. While this event is a webcast, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples' lands that we are on today. Deloitte Canada has offices with representation across most of the country. We acknowledge that our office reside on traditional, treaty, and unceded territories as part of the Turtle Island, which is still home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Innovation in isolation can be difficult. On the other hand, creativity, when supported by a collaborative environment, which inspires ideas to be shared and challenged and refined, it can generate opportunities for novel approaches to be pursued. In a research conducted by Gartner, it showed that crowdsourcing ideas had been used by 25% of Fortune 500 companies. In shifting towards a more outside-in approach to problem solving and innovation, many businesses and public sector organizations have used competitions, hackathons, and challenges like the Gravity Challenge to innovate and create value. Partnering with ecosystem partners provides several advantages, including greater access across the world to knowledge and subject matter expertise, decreased time to create a viable proof of concept, and diversity of thought. Today, as part of today's discussion, we will hear and discuss how space capabilities and data can be used to solve high-value business problems. More specifically, as part of Gravity Challenge 4th edition, we will discuss how innovation ecosystems composed of corporations, entrepreneurs, universities can be brought together to design and build solutions that help solve real industry, social, and environmental problems. Before we kick off this session and before I introduce our esteemed panelists to you, I would love to run a quick poll, a poll focused on the application of satellite imagery. I'd love to hear from you what you believe are concrete applications are of satellite imagery today. We're going to take a few minutes for you to complete our Slido poll. And please do let us know, what applications of satellite imagery do you believe are impacting our world today? Let's review some of your responses. We'll give you another minute. Already have one response around defense, wildlife management, exploring materials or minerals inside the soil. Unfortunately, another reminder of the war in Ukraine and the defense-related applications of satellite imagery. Wildfires, yes, detection and management of wildfires. Pollution. Floods, infrastructure, resource allocations. Indeed. Food, yes, I was hoping to see something. Precision agriculture, precision farming, absolutely. We can use it from a crop yield perspective. Arctic ice movement, population density, weather, development. Fantastic. Great. Thanks for sharing. So today, basically, we are going to explore how satellite imagery can be used to inform policy development in our public service organization here in Canada. I have the pleasure today of being joined by a few panelists, starting with Nicholas Martinez from Statistics Canada. Nicholas is a project manager with StatScan. He's based in Ottawa. He's led a number of projects over the last 5 years in IT, system development, economic modeling, survey development, and the use of Earth observation, also known as EO, in official statistics. Nicholas has a breadth of experience touching sectors in resource development, energy, and construction. He is passionate about team building and collaborating with industry stakeholders and governments while delivering value and insights to us Canadians through the continuous improvement of statistical program. Nicholas, we are thrilled to have you today with us. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Audrey.
Next, we have Mr. Gaetano Volpe. Gaetano is the founder and CEO of Latitudo 40, a startup in the downstream Earth observation or EO sector. He's also the founder and CFO of Esferatros, a Luxembourg-based startup focused on a new satellite carrier for small sats. With more than 20 years of experience in space and telecommunications, Gaetano is a business coach with extensive experience in strategy development, business design, and business applied to coaching activities for companies, startups, and SMEs. Gaetano has consolidated experience in business development, technology innovation, R&D, and designing growth. For Gaetano, space is not just a job. It is a passion he has cultivated since he was a child and dreamed of becoming an astronaut. Gaetano, we are thrilled to have you on our panel today.
Yes, good morning. Happy for me to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
And thank you, Gaetano, for joining us from Napoli in Italy at this time of the day. Really appreciate it. Our third panelist is Ali El-Awad. He is a senior manager within our Omnia AI practice. Ali has a strong passion for bridging the gap between traditional industries and AI practices. Ali has expertise in designing and developing computer vision AI solutions that accelerate the journey of AI utilization with successful accomplishments, which include amplifying the status of the Deloitte acquired data performance. Welcome, Ali. Welcome to our panel.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Audrey.
Fantastic. Great. So let me share with you, dear listeners, what questions we're going to use for our panel. This will give you a chance to think about additional questions you might want to submit through our Q&A or our chat function. So the 4 questions that we're going to ask our panelists are in front of you right now, and we're going to start with the first one. We're going to start with a basic question. What is the gravity challenge? And I would love to start by asking you, Nicholas, as the organization that brought together the business problem to this challenge, I would love for you to discuss and define what the gravity challenge meant for you and meant for Statistics Canada.
Yeah, so thanks, Audrey. And it's a lot of pressure to be the first to speak. So I'll try and be relatively brief. But, for me, the gravity challenge was, it was a game changer. And I don't think I can undersell that point for me and for my project. We'd been in development for a number of years, and we had, we knew what we knew, but we also didn't know what we didn't know. And through participation in the Gravity Challenge, we were able to leverage some of the best and brightest minds in the world. And of course, at Latitudo 40, and Deloitte really helped put us all together. So for me, this was it was a major opportunity, and as I said, it was a game changer for my project and bringing us forward. I don't want to spoil it too much because I know we have to talk in the other questions too. So
I like that you're pacing yourself, Nicholas. Well done. So for these kind of challenges, right, we need an organization that brings a real industry business problem, and that was Stats Canada. Then we need people who are bringing their expertise that come in and compete. And Gaetano, with Latitudo 40, you were one of those quote unquote competitors, team member to this innovation program. So talk to us about how you defined the Gravity Challenge, how you approached it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my experience. This was for us a very big opportunity, opportunity for growth, because we are a small startup with low opportunity to enter in contact with large organization, to enter in contact with digital champions, and to deal with real market problem. For the startup, the problem is always the market fit, the validation of the idea, and using this challenge, the challenge description provided by the challenge owners, StatCan, we at the downstream, the Earth observation solution can really solve a real problem, a real business problem, and gave us the possibility to think a new solution, a new application for our technology, for our business, and for the output of our R&D activities.
Thanks, Gaetano. And last but not least, Ali, what's your take on the challenge, and what was Deloitte's role in it?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. I think Deloitte, it started as, Deloitte getting interest in the space sector in general as one of those technologies that exponentially improve, I'd say humanity and the world in general. But the idea is Gravity Challenge came out of that need to develop a global initiative that bridges the gap between government, corporations, and startups, right? And knowing that for a fact, the new wave of the space technology and space startups are changing drastically how the space sector is approached. And the aim here is to speed up the adoption process of space technology across the board. And also, when I speak specifically about this round of Gravity Challenge, which is Gravity Challenge 4, previously there was a couple of Gravity Challenges for the past 5 years, and they have always been focused around Earth observation. It's been the theme around it, but there's quite a lot of other application in the future, perhaps in space exploration. And the role for Deloitte has been continuously to really bring those two, the innovators and the challenges together, and trying to help them from business perspective, from the market fit as well, to come up with viable solutions to the problems that the challenges are having, that are financially viable, that are innovative, and show higher return of investments. And also in its nature, it's global. You can see here Canadian challenger StatCan benefiting from a European, Italian innovator firm. So that's where you can go out of the box and see who could provide the best solution out there, partner with them, and really catapult your development effort.
Thanks, Ali. Let's move on to our second question. So Nicholas, as the challenger, like Ali called you, how did you frame the business problem? We often say when we think about AI or machine learning, the first crucial important step is framing the business, reframing, iterating on your business problem. How did you approach that?
Sure, yeah. So for me, as I was kind of touching on earlier, we'd been at the project for some time, and we knew that the technology using remote sensing for change detection for construction starts was viable. We were able to make it work with a very high resolution satellite imagery. That being said, we also had come to the realization that the mechanism through which we were acquiring data as the Government of Canada rendered our project, technically feasible, but economically unviable. And this is why I said, it was a game changer. When I presented my challenge to the Gravity Challenge Cycle 4, what I had done, and I mean, I'm coming at this as somebody who had no prior experience in EO or managing an EO project, right? So my thinking was I had a data cost problem. I wanted to more efficiently buy my data. I just assumed that the price was the price and I couldn't get around it. So I had framed my problem as one of needing to very quickly develop a mode for smart tasking satellites so that I was only buying data for areas where construction activity was ongoing or we anticipated it to begin. So this was the challenge I presented. Let me just see here, back to the question, how to pop up here. So anyway, so that's how I presented the problem. And I was just really happy and excited when Gaetano and Latitudo 40 and some of the other innovators as well, they all presented solutions that didn't respond exactly to the question that I asked, but they all understood my business need. And I'm going to say that, you know, as somebody who came from a non-EO background, I think that left me open to solutions that were being presented, because as I sort of said at the beginning, I knew that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so if there were a lot of people saying, well, hey, here's the solution that maybe you hadn't thought of that might work for you, you know, are you willing to give that a try? I had to take it.
Love it, Nicholas. And I love that you're calling your own known incompetence. That's a great one to share in a role model. So Gaetano, you received a challenge, and so as the innovator, how did you approach the challenge?
Yeah. For us, the challenge was an opportunity to give value to our platform. We created a workflow, an automatic workflow that simplified the complexity, because Earth observation is a very established technology, more than 30 years that this technology is on the market, but never moved from niche to mainstream because the technology is complex. So the first topic of Latitudo 40 is to simplify this access, to create an access very similar to Google Maps or other solution. For us, the satellite in our platform, satellite image are like raw materials, and we created a digital factory to transform these raw materials in product. In the meantime, we started to work in that period on super resolution. So how to use free of charge images provided by European Space Agency with Sentinel Copernicus constellation that has a continuous acquisition. So there is no hole in the acquisition, but the satellite acquired constantly around our globe. And our idea is how to improve these images, because at 10 meters of resolution, there is not so information to use. So we applied AI and some deep learning activity to transform this image from 10 meters to 1 meter. So to compare this image with a commercial image acquired by Planet or Maxar. So this is the challenge presented by StatCan was for us the opportunity to verify if this technology can be applied in a real business case. We tested previously the technology to detect farm boundaries, but this application was really new, the change detection, the building detection. So we try to do this with a lateral approach. So we say, okay, we imagine that all the company can offer a standard approach. We have this value proposition, this secret sauce, and so we tried to apply the secret sauce to this challenge, and we received the success. So it's a challenge also for us to go beyond the state of the art. This is the challenge for my team, for my AI team, development team, and we refined the solution meeting by meeting in constant interaction. This is another fantastic thing that is not possible in normal commercial activity with a customer, because Nicholas dedicated a lot of time, Nicholas and his team dedicated a lot of time to us. We tested several aspects, lean approach to the challenge, and then we are at the end of the period of cooperative period, we reached a result. So a fantastic experience, motivation to do every day better than the previous day. And so this is evolution, this is innovation, this is open innovation that connect company with startups.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Gaetano. And I think we're now sharing the pictures. Maybe you can comment on the result of your approach and what it looks like.
Yeah, on the first image that you see on the right part of the on the left part of the slide, you see the original image acquired by the satellite. This image is not so defined. You cannot analyze details, and with this image, it's not possible to solve the problem that Nicolas put in the challenge. In the second image, in the right part of the slide, you can see the result, the elaboration after the approach of the AI and deep learning methodology. You can see that it's a completely different image. It's an image where the details are clear, and you can apply change detection. So you can see the change between one image and the other. Also because this level of zoom is very high, but if you go in low level zoom, the first image is not understandable, are very big squares. On the other side, you see the details. And so also Nicolas and all other customers that we are working with are impressed by these results. And we are now working out to create a patent around this. In Europe, it's very complex to patent software, but we are working on it. And now we are applying this technology also in other cases. For example, we are helping another startup in Ukraine. With this technology, we are applying their algorithm that can identify the damage of buildings. We are counting how many buildings are destroyed by the war, to create a map that can be used for the reconstruction. So the use of the technology is very, very huge. And we are very proud that we are here and we can present our solution.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gaetano, for sharing your work visually, but also sharing with us a practical, unfortunately, very real application of your work for a good cause in Ukraine. Ali, as someone who is completely passionate about computer vision, you observing the competition at play, what were your takeaways as a Deloitte professional?
I was actually blown away with the possibilities of what you can use super resolution for and these techniques. I mean, I read quite a lot about in papers, what they could be used for. I've seen a lot of let's call it artistic application of super resolution, but to see it in action and the possibility what you can do with it and directly tying it to the financial aspect to it of what it could save in terms of cost and allow a huge suite of application. It's stunning. Previously, I have used this technology before. It was an incremental value in terms of model improvement. So I remember it was, I think, a model performing at a 94% detection rate. I think we brought it up to 97%, 3%, a mere 3% improvement. But here, what you're looking at is it's a light and day difference, right? It goes from not being able to detect a feature to all the way to detecting a feature, a change. And in some cases counting, right? And that's the type of transformative AI technologies that we're hoping to work with in the coming years.
Thanks for that, Ali. Let's come back to you, Nicolas, and go into third gear. Think about the impact of the challenge. So in terms of the tangible outputs coming out of the challenge, what was the impact for you and for StatsCan? Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. So, and I'm gonna take this back a little bit, just because I don't think I really introduced my use case very well at the beginning. So, for those who don't know me, who don't know my project, the Geospatial Construction Starts project is looking to detect the beginning part of construction for all residential and non-residential projects in Canada. This project came out of my redesign of our investment in building construction model. This program, the IBC program, estimates the value of construction put in place for Canada which represents approximately 7.6% of the Canadian economy. So construction is not an insignificant part of GDP. And we had, as one of our key inputs into that program, the Starts Completion Survey. It's conducted by Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. Now they do this the old-fashioned way, boots on the ground. They go out and validate based on issued building permits and this kind of thing, new projects that are starting. Unfortunately, because it's being done the old-fashioned way, coverage is limited. You can't get everywhere every time. And sometimes by the time they do arrive at a construction project, maybe it started a while ago, but they give us their best estimate on when it started. Of course, Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation isn't only interested really in the residential side, and whereas for myself and the Statistics Canada side, I'm also trying to estimate for the non-residential sector. For fast forwarding a little bit here, so when we initiated this project, we were looking at blue sky thinking, what can we do to improve our data inputs to produce better outputs? The IBC data gets used by our national accounts and downstream by the Bank of Canada, Finance Canada, provincial finance departments, and of course, they're using all of this to help set interest rates, something that affects all of us. And of course, we're more acutely aware of this right now in Canada as inflation has been going up, and the Bank of Canada, just yesterday raising interest rates again, another 50 basis points. So this data matters. It matters in our day-to-day lives, and it's more than just tracking what's going on. This construction project or that construction project. It's the big picture. So the outputs for the GCS, Geospatial Construction Starts project, and the outputs by Latitude 040, enabling the Geospatial Construction Starts project, it would have a huge value to our business operations and being able to produce better data for policymakers in a timely fashion. Because through COVID, that was another key thing that kind of came out, was we received a lot of pressure from policymakers to provide nowcast data. What's happening with the economy now? They really needed to know, so they could put the appropriate measures in place to support the economy and to support Canadians. So, all of that really comes together to define the value of what this potentially could bring to us. And there are also a lot of potential snowball impacts of this. So, I talked a little bit earlier about the data cost and how this was an impediment to us. Well, the snowball effect of these kinds of challenges is, and the solution that was brought by Latitude 040, like I said, it was a game changer in that it will enable us to move forward with a pilot project, and hopefully develop this into a program that we can apply at a national scale, and that will have all other kinds of knock-on effects, because in addition to providing data for our program, the data could also be used for other things. And I think I've touched on a couple of these, not here but elsewhere. There are a lot of use cases that could help us monitor and report on land available for development, for example. So one of the key components that we're looking at using is parcel data, that's and monitoring those parcels. And when we're looking at the housing supply issue and the different policies that are being implemented around housing supply and land supply, green belts in Toronto, this kind of thing, if we're looking at it from a big picture perspective, we can say, okay, well, do we have enough land already allocated? Is it that builders just aren't building, or is it that we need different types of zoning in certain areas? And that kind of information, which isn't presently produced at a national level, could really help people get a handle on the issues, and produce better policies that could impact housing affordability, housing supply, and that kind of thing.
Thanks, Nicholas, for situating the problem in its context, quantifying the importance, but also sharing some concrete applications of the challenge. Gaetano, I believe that through this competition, you were able to solve a certain cloud problem, which will help, or cloud coverage problem, I should say, which should help with further use cases in the future. Can you talk to us about the snowball effect of these kinds of challenges?
Yeah, we have several snowball effects. The first one is that we solved the chicken and egg problem of the startup, the traction. So with the confirmation of the value of our solution by a big organization, it's clear that we can demonstrate that there is a traction for our idea. So we can continue to investment, we can commit resources on this project. And in the interaction with the StatCan, we identified another problem, that Canada has a very huge cloud coverage, and so the optical image cannot pass through the cloud. So we need to solve another problem. We solved the first problem, now we have another problem. And so for this, my team started to work on another project that is a derivation of this, that is how to have an optical image use that can be super resoluted. And so we had an idea to use the SAR, so the radar image, because the radar is an active sensor that can pass through the cloud, but the image is not so understandable. And so we are applying now new algorithm that transform as a different as a chain of processing. So the first aspect is to transform a SAR radar image in an optical image with the 10-meter resolution. And then after this, we apply the super resolution. In this way, we have the possibility to solve also the problem of the cloud cover. So this is the idea. How the challenge is a spark for us, is the spark for new idea. And also with this traction, with this demonstration that the technology can solve a problem, we acquired another customer in Italy with the same problem of how to transform the field survey, how to accelerate the field survey. This is a motorway. They need to, the motorway has around 7,000 lots along this motorway, and they need to decide where to put solar panels. And so we use the same technology to analyze these 7,000 lots, reducing the time from 7 days to 2 weeks for the analysis of the entire network. And we identify if in this lot there is a small object, a small construction that could be a problem for the installation of the new panels. So just to conclude that this is a typical application how the downstream sector is fundamental for the space industry, because a lot of investors are putting money in the upstream, in creating new constellation, new satellite, new payload. We use that very well established, because Sentinel-2 was launched in 2014, so it's a very old-fashioned satellite. But with the technology, with the AI, with the everyday work, and with the transmission chain that transforms the image in something useful in a business process, we bring the technology to the customer. This is the big problem now in the space industry, how to take the image and distribute it to a very fragmented market. And so during the challenge, we had the opportunity to found new ideas and to improve this with a real interaction with the real customer. So we are very happy of this. This is a fantastic experience for us in this period.
For sure. Thanks for sharing, Gaetano. Ali, up front, the audience share with us lots of application of satellite imagery. Obviously, we've been talking policy development right here in the context of urban development or reconstruction, like Gaetano was speaking. What's your take on the snowball effects of, the democratization of basically satellite imagery. How do you see this playing out for some of the people that are in the audience right now that are, you know, part of public administrations or enterprises? How should this potentially affect us in the future, potentially affect them in the future?
That is definitely a very good question. I would say that there's maybe three folds that this could be making a big difference. We can start also with first with the innovation angle of this, right? Traditionally, you would have to do quite a lot of investment, try to understand how you could play in the space sector or how it could benefit your organization. But with things like, you know, the Gravity Challenge, it's creating an easy way to get into this area and try to explore what could be done for your organization. So all the innovation angle of it, trying to discover, oh, I have a problem, I am not so sure if space is a good fit. With something like the Gravity Challenge, you can put a challenge and see if someone could solve it with the Earth observation or satellite data, and that's where that gap between, you know, commitment to such a large pursuit of trying to use space technology in any of its shapes or forms, to actually concretely being able to have a use case, you know, developed within few months. And that's where the biggest benefit too. The second point is this type of challenge, for example, as you see the super resolution concept is democratizing access to the data, right? Because that was the second bucket of challenge when it comes to using space technologies. It was traditionally expensive, and that barrier is becoming that barrier is breaking right now, and it's becoming much more democratized. There's a suite of satellites right now that are being put into orbit that have a lower cost of imagery. They're cheaper. There's also AI technology like what Latitude 40 with Gitano are doing. They're democratizing the cost of the data. And the last piece here, right? There's more and more applications beyond the standard, for example, the defense application or the standard pure research use of Earth observation data. And that is making organization realize that, well, this technology is not for the original intended use only. Those satellites right now are using the latest kind of off-the-shelf type of electronics to provide even higher quality imagery that now are enabling a new suite of applications, monitoring emissions, as well as understanding the temperature of different buildings on the ground or in a large scale. All that is becoming possible because this new type of data and technologies are going beyond the traditional use of Earth observation. So by understanding that, organization could slowly kind of lean into some of those Earth observation applications and dabble into it through something like the Gravity Challenge.
Thanks, Ali. Let's move to our fourth and last question for the panel. This is an opportunity for me to remind our audience to kindly share your questions for our panelists in the chat or the Q&A section. So my last question for you is, what advice can you share with others that are considering an AI or ML open competition or hackathon or challenge? Or what are your advice for people who basically want to innovate and are looking for assistance or looking for that outside-in approach and support from ecosystem partners? Let's start with you, Nicholas. What's your advice for others, given what you've gone through on this Gravity Challenge?
Thanks, Audrey. So my advice to anyone who's considering coming forward and putting a challenge in cycle 5 or cycle 6, wherever you guys on your own development missions, is absolutely do it. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. You know, my project was almost dead in the water a year ago, like back in February this spring, and because of our work together with Latitudo, we were able to prove the financial viability of the project. And you know, Audrey, I think we talked about this earlier, but it's a 98% reduction in data costs compared to what we were looking at before, which is huge. And with that, reduction in cost, we were able to breathe viability back into this. And really now it's a nuts and bolts problem in terms of just putting things together and being able to build a new program that will benefit policymakers and Canadians ultimately. So, you know, there's sometimes fear about getting off the fence and engaging. And working with, you know, the innovators through the Gravity Challenge is free. So if you're a project manager like me on a budget, that was also a great experience because you're able to leverage the talent and the sweat of the brightest minds in the world, you know, risk-free. And Deloitte is walking you through the process the whole way, keeping you on task, making the job easy. As a PM, you know, it was really helpful having Ali and the Deloitte team walking me through this. And, you know, sometimes organizations are afraid to get involved because they're worried about market capture or getting into a new fiscal arrangement or with a new seller of data or services. But if you're worried about the potential future costs of having a wildly successful program or innovative solution, well, you forgot the first part, which is you've got a wildly successful and innovative solution. So it's probably worth, you know, entering into that commercial arrangement after the fact. So I think, you know, as long as you're open to those experiences and, you know, you can explore the possible, and I would absolutely recommend getting involved.
Thanks for sharing that, Nicholas. Gaetano, your take and your encouragement, I guess, for innovators out there, startups, entrepreneurs, folks who are, you know, considering putting out their capabilities out there and joining such a competition or challenge. What's your advice?
Yeah, Audrey, thank you for this opportunity to share my vision with other startups or other innovators. This is a big opportunity. Now, the gravity is totally concentrated on the space technologies, probably the only global competition that focus on application of innovation in the space technology. The technology is evolving extremely fast in the moment. Italy and Canada are two space countries because we have a constellation of satellite. Canada launched the RadarSat in 1995. So it's another era at the moment. Now, Italy invested just with the new plan to create a new constellation, 1.2 billion to create a new space ecosystem in Italy. But it's complex. It's complex to enter in this market, to gain traction, to identify the user personas, the typical aspect that you study on the book. So the user persona, the use cases, to validate your idea. And so the Gravity Challenge is the World Cup of the space competition, probably I can define. It's a competition where you have your competitor are the top of the innovation at worldwide level, because the competition is open to company all over the world. So you go in a very extensive competition. It's not a sales activity, so it's an investment also for the company. So the investment is on both parts, the company and the innovator and the large company. But it's a challenge not only for the company as organization, it's a challenge for the team. It's an opportunity for the team to try to have this lateral approach, this think out of the think out of the box, and to elevate the limit. Typical in the everyday job, you have the limit. You don't have this long-term vision to reach this objective over the state of the art that we can see. And so you can work to create new use cases. You can work to improve the experience, because also in the interaction with Deloitte, we had the opportunity to interact with the methodology that Deloitte has with StatCan. So it's also an improvement, personal improvement of the team on the approach to the work, because it's very difficult for a startup to have a weekly meeting with a large organization, large consultancy firm like Deloitte, where you need to pay a lot of money if you need to have a coach by Deloitte in your company. So we had the opportunity to be coached by Ali and by other people in the Deloitte. So this is another advantage. It's clear we invested, the StatCan and every corporate invest time, but the final is a win-win approach, because if the challenge has a success, we as a startup, as innovator, have the opportunity to enter in a new market, and the challenge owner has the opportunity to obtain a project, give to have a benefit, a business benefit, and to reduce the cost of scouting, because probably Nicholas or any other company can find us browsing on the internet, but probably how many times he needs to spend to search an innovator. With this challenge, he received probably different proposal, and he chose the best one, the best that fit is need. So I invite every startup, every innovator, every team to try to do this job. This also, if they will not be selected, is not a failure, is an experience. Is an experience that give you the chance next time to improve your proposal and to have a better result.
Thanks for that, Gaetano. Ali, I believe you have a certain perspective from a talent view, right? People who may want to test their capabilities or push their capabilities, pick up a new skill. What's your call to action?
My call to action is challenges like those are the fastest way to reskill, to learn a new set of tools, and the idea of a time frame, the competition makes it more fun, gamified in a way, but very tangible outcome. And at the end of it, you would be very content with the development, your personal development as well, technical development that you will gain from such process. And if you look across the landscape of competition, right, those competitions are really inspiring. You could see in the space sector, you have, what Deloitte is doing here with the Gravity Challenge. You have XPRIZE, it's a standard global challenge. NASA challenges are a great way to get global competition, learn from others, learn how they do things, and basically, in a way, increases collaboration in a way we've never seen before. Actually, I'll share a personal maybe story here. My interest in the space sector came from a challenge. I was part of a challenge during school time. And the aim of the challenge was how could we increase the space talent pool in Canada. At the time, there was a shortage of individuals with space hardware and software knowledge. So one of the leaders in the sector kind of went around, gathered some funds from different companies, and created a challenge for people to build satellites, and the winner get to have a launch to space. And that just basically rallied hundreds of students around this cause and built satellites across Canada. And at the end of it, fast forward 5 years, you have more than 1,000 graduates of these programs with skill in the space sector. And all that done with the energy you could expect from students, learned a lot about the field, became at least starter to intermediate level in the field. And you can find that way of skilling people and having a drive and passion for what they're doing without something like a challenge.
Love it. Thanks for sharing your personal story, Ali. And I think all of you, thank you for sharing your perspective on how you learned something, right? You developed some skills through the process and enjoyed being exposed to a diversity of thought and expertise, right? Each with your respective expertise. Really enjoy that. Let me ask you, Nicholas, a question around what other space applications would you like to pursue?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think this is a great question to ask. It's timely for me. I'm a member of the Government of Canada's Downstream Working Group. I'm not sure if we've got other members here in the audience, perhaps. But one of the things that we're looking at is expanding the development of use cases in the, I'm going to call it the gray economy. So, you know, a lot of EO focuses on the blue side of things, the maritime monitoring, oceans, that kind of thing. And then there's the green EO, which covers, you know, land-based monitoring of forests and agriculture and biomass and other kinds of stuff like that. So the gray is looking at infrastructure and the human-built environment. And I'd like to continue to expand in this area. I'm hoping to build a list of use cases that we can add and build off of you know, the data from Latitudo. I touched on one, which is in addition to the Geospatial Construction Starts project, the monitoring of parcels and the development of those parcels. So the growth in the stock of those parcels, so that we know that we have a good supply of land for people to build on, which is very important. Of course, another one that I've discussed with some other colleagues is improving our disaster management dashboard. So there's a program in Canada whereby the federal government and provinces, you know, together underwrite disaster management sort of insurance for Canadians. And one of the things that kind of came up is, well, you know, it would be great if we could, if there was an impact on a specific area, we could draw a boundary file or like draw a boundary around the impacted area and produce a dashboard of all the information sort of that affects the people who are there. So either, you know, property values, languages of people who are spoken in the area that we might get from, like, say, the census, of course, sensitized and anonymized so that there's no risk to privacy issues there. But you know, getting this information into the hands of those disaster management response responders so that they can better serve people who are there, and so governments can better plan for the liability of those events. So that's one. And I think, you know, there's other stuff to be done around the construction sector. You know, maybe mapping traffic patterns, you know, maybe looking at road network development as an indicator of future growth. There are all kinds of ideas I could think of. But of course, if you have other ideas too, if you're a member of the audience, feel free to reach out to me, you know, either on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if Deloitte has all my information, if they're going to share it, but feel free to touch base. And I'd love to hear the ideas, because at some point we've got to build the world that we want to see, and these are the kinds of things that bring value to Canadians, and I'm passionate about that. So
love that, Nicholas, and that you're so open to ideas from our audience and others. Let's go to you, Guy. I know I'm wondering if you could share with us your views on where satellite imagery is going and what we might expect, you know, 5 years from now.
Yeah, fantastic question, because as you presented me, I am like a dinosaur of the space, because I started more than 25 years ago in the satellite. In the last 20 years, the satellite never changed. It's a stupid object that is flying around our globe, transmitting information. So in the last 5 years, we entered in this space 2.0, and probably we evolved to space 3 and 4.0. And first of all, we'll now have a huge number of satellites in space. So we moved from large satellites to CubeSat. So now the satellite, the CubeSat, is like 15 centimeter, an object of 15 centimeter with a camera. So more satellite, this means that we can have more revisiting time. So now, for example, with Sentinel, we have 2 images per week. Now with Planet, we have 1 image per day. But with new constellation of Satellogic, that is a South American company, we can have an image every 20 minutes in the next couple of years. So probably in the future, we can move from image to video, also because the technology of the communication technology between satellite and ground is evolving. Now there are a lot of experimentation of laser communication, that this means that it's possible to transfer terabyte of data from space to the ground. and this opened the logic for the video from the space, something that we saw in Minority Report or James Bond film, where I can ask to follow a criminal using the satellite. Probably not in the next 5 years will be a reality. It's clear that there is also changing the technology. Just a couple of days ago, Amazon AWS shared the news that one of the AI ML algorithm is not executed in the data center of the AWS, but on board of a satellite of an Italian company that is Deorbit. This company is creating the space cloud. So the concept to move the elaboration from the ground to the space, this means that more real time in information, all the elaboration, all the intelligence is on board of the satellite. The satellite will not be more a stupid object, but a smart object that can identify object in the image, share only the notification. So the market is evolving very, very fast. The new technology is just around the corner, is the hyperspectral. So this means that each image is not 8 bands of lights like now, but is now there are tests from 120 to 160 different bands of lights. This means that it's possible to identify the spectral signature of materials. I can detect if there is a concrete or wood or any other asbestos, for example, from the space. So the market is evolving extremely fast, a lot of investment in the market. And so at the moment it's very difficult to give a precise answer to your question. Probably it's possible to see what will happen in the next 6 months, but it's very difficult to move to 5 years, also because now we have the exploration of the moon. Artemis, Italy is a big part of Artemis 1. We will come back to the moon, but the next step is the exploration of other planets because the mining, one of the future deep space exploration is how to find valuable resource, and this you can have from the satellite that can identify where there is gold, platinum, or other materials on asteroids or any other planet. So this is a very evolving market, and we need to monitor every day this aspect to have the chance to take the hype of this market.
Fantastic. Nicholas, Gaetano, Ali, thank you so much for joining me today to make space capabilities and data a bit more real for folks on this this AI Institute webcast. I really also appreciated how you helped us demystify what a data or an ML competition or hackathon looks like. I'd love to hear from you, our audience, on how we did today, how this was conducive to your learning. I'll give you a minute to complete our polling questions.
And I'd just like to commend Deloitte for the integrity of the survey. I tried to vote 10 for myself on the quality of my panel discussion, but I couldn't. So well done.
I like that you tried, Nicholas. That's great. Love it. Atif, if I can ask you to move to our next slide, I wanted to just briefly say a few words about our next webcast in January. We will look at AI in life sciences and healthcare. So do register, do tune in if you're interested in that topic or in any of the topic that we have lined up for 2023. If today we piqued your interest with computer vision, do join us in February. More to come on the topic, absolutely. So once again, Gaetano, Nicholas, Ali, thank you so much for being with us today. And to our loyal audience, thank you for your pieces of feedback. We appreciate it. Grazie mille. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey.